Tokyo DisneySea's enormous Fantasy Springs expansion is home to Peter Pan's Neverland, Frozen Kingdom, and Rapunzel's Forest, based on the Tangled movie. But whilst Peter Pan and Frozen very much do have their own areas, did they lie to us about a Rapunzel miniland? I'm Jordan from 8-Bit Theme Park, a big Tokyo Disney nerd who lives in Japan, and in this week's video, I'm going to talk about what you can find in the new Tangled miniland, and, maybe more importantly, what's missing. So we've all been so excited for Fantasy Springs for such a long time, and even though people have strong opinions going both ways about everything in the area, you can't deny that it's wonderful to just finally have the place open after all of this anticipation and all of this waiting. OLC have been promising from the start that we're gonna get a Peter Pan miniland, a Frozen miniland, and a Rapunzel miniland. But I think that last one was a little bit deceiving. Now, we're going to get into the ride later on, and I know that the ride has disappointed a lot of people as well. But first, I want to talk about the area, or lack thereof. You see, not only were we promised a Rapunzel miniland, even if you look on the map right now, you can see that each of the 4 minilands, because yes, there are 4, I'll get into that in another video because people are not talking about that enough. You can very clearly see that the Frozen area has this blue path, the Peter Pan's Neverland area has this red path, and then there's a purple path in the corner that whole area is supposed to be a Rapunzel land. And when you look at it on the map, it seems like more or less the same size as Neverland, or, you know, not too dissimilar in size to Neverland and Frozen areas. But I think this is really deceiving, because there's this thick path that goes right past the whole thing, and that path very much is not Rapunzel. In fact, that path, both in terms of function and form, as in the way it looks, it's very much a Fantasy Springs path. It's a plain, largely unthemed path that I sort of feel like is in between all of the mini-lands and helps you get to them. It's more of a transport area between them, rather than a part of the land. If you're walking down this path expecting to see Rapunzel details around, like you do if you walk through Frozen Kingdom or Peter Pan's Neverland, you're going to be disappointed because it's not. This path is not the Rapunzel land. So that drastically shrinks down what can be considered the Rapunzel area to this tiny area here, which basically, for all intents and purposes, is the entrance to the ride, the entrance to the restaurant, and just this little view of the tower. And I'm gonna get into the ride in detail a bit later on, but I think this is why they went for an indoor-outdoor style boat ride. I think this is why so much of the ride is outdoors. I think this is why they put the tower outside. I think this is all because they wanted to be able to say that there's a Rapunzel miniland, but there's not. And if that whole ride was indoors, all you would see was a restaurant building and a ride building. And they can't pretend that that's a miniland, right? But as you see the boats going by, and you hear Rapunzel's voice from the tower, and then you walk around and you realize you can see the Rapunzel animatronic from the area, it's a very special area. It's a very, very special thing. We do not very often, especially in this day and age, get audio animatronics outside at Disney parks. So I think this absolutely rocks. I think it's an awesome decision. And, you know, we have to assume that this area was given less of a budget than the other areas. I think that's pretty clear. So, with all of that considered, I think it was a really smart choice to have this outdoor section of the ride. It does sort of trick your brain into thinking this is a little area when really it's just a ride and a restaurant. Now, I do have to say that seeing that Rapunzel figure for the first time just made me lose my mind. And honestly, the first time I went into Fantasy Springs, before getting on any of the rides, you know, just walking around and absorbing it all in, the most excited I got, probably by quite a large margin, was seeing that Rapunzel figure up the tower. And I just stood there for ages, just looking at her, completely in awe that they built this amazing animatronic and stuck her outside for everyone to see. Okay, so this isn't a mini land. It's a restaurant and a ride. You know, it's a little disappointing, but at the same time, Rapunzel's tower is in the middle of the forest, the Snuggly Duckling is in the middle of the forest. I do still think that that main path should have been more incorporated into the Rapunzel area, and it could have just been some small props and details like this Mr. Smee Captain Hook totem pole thing we see in Neverland. You know, just some little storytelling things. But if we're willing to accept that, okay, this is basically a ride and a restaurant, it's not really a mini land, they did give you a small area to feel like you're immersed in the world of the Tangled movie. I keep saying movie, and people who've watched the series might be annoyed that I'm not mentioning the series, but I haven't watched the whole series, but I've watched a little bit, and I think this is very much based on the movie. I didn't see anything that was hinting at the series. So just in case you were wondering about that, this is all based on the movie. An interesting point is that the area, by which I mean the exterior of the ride and the restaurant, they're all set after the events of the movie, whilst the ride is the movie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's check out the Snuggly Duckling, because they did a really great job with this thing. It's such a fun vibe in here. And even when you just see the exterior of the building, this giant tree that's crushed the small tavern, it's a pretty big set piece. It's really detailed, it's really fun to look at, and it perfectly sets the tone for the fun fairy tale vibe of the restaurant. You may even be able to find a leaf that looks like a certain tri-circle-headed mouse, but I've got a bunch of hidden secrets around the whole of Fantasy Springs that I'm gonna save for another video, because there are some mind-blowing ones. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss that. Okay, so after admiring the outside of the Snuggly Duckling restaurant, and getting our mobile order, as that's currently the only way to experience the restaurants in Fantasy Springs, we can head inside and grab something to eat. You'll immediately notice that those details that I was saying they could have added outside, this place is absolutely full of them. As soon as you get in, you can see the roots of the tree that have come inside the restaurant. You can also see these pictures of a sort of before, middle, and after of the tree overgrowing and taking over the building. And the further inside you get, the more of these details you start to find. What they basically did is they took the whole I've Got a Dream scene from the movie. They took every little gag that they make about all of the different locals who frequent the bar, and they just filled the place with details that those people would have put in there. You can see puppets, because Fang does little puppet shows, and you can even see Vladimir's collection of ceramic unicorns. The people who were designing this knew what the assignment was. Take that fun and wacky song with all those characters and bring it all to life here. They did a fantastic job with it. Okay, but this is a restaurant. How about the food? Well, whilst a lot of the food in Fantasy Springs is disappointing, this is the one restaurant that I would come back to just for the food. Now, it's nothing out of this world, but they do have some fun, tasty items. This is basically a burger place. You can get this special beef burger that has a sort of spam layer on the top, but it's nicer than spam, but it is heavily processed bright pink meat. And then the other burger option is this shrimp burger, which was really tasty. Honestly, I liked both of these. And the yellow bread is not just decorative. Yellow because it's the Snuggly Duckling, so it's supposed to be ducky, quack, quack. But it also, I don't know if it's made with rice flour or what, but it's a little bit kind of spongy and squishy. It gives the burger a unique texture, and it's not in a bad way. I like it. Now, you can also get fries with your burger. If you get it as a set, you'll get fries and a drink. So that's soft drinks, or you can pay extra to upgrade it to a beer, which is the only alcoholic option on the menu. Honestly, I'll get into Frozen Kingdom and their restaurant in another video, but considering this is like half the price of the food there, I think it's so much better. And especially if you have some picky eaters, everyone's happy with a burger and fries, right? I can recommend this place. They also have some cute desserts, and one of them I loved, and one of them I was disappointed with, and they were the opposites of what I expected. So they've been talking about this frying pan pancake thing for a while, and I thought it looked great. It's sort of a thick, doughy pancake that's soft, and it has this cream on the top. I thought it would be really warm and mushy and have loads of sauce soaking it up, but it's cold and dry, like there is not enough sauce at all, and it's like chewy. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very nice, which is a shame because I think it's so close to being good. I think if they were warm and they had some more sauce, they could be really tasty, but sadly it's not as good as it looks. However, the caramel cupcake was even better than it looks. I'm just a sucker for caramel. I don't know, maybe this is just me. You take a bite into this caramel muffin and it's just full of gooey caramel sauce. Yum, 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 yum. I really like those. I am definitely gonna go back here whenever I'm in Fantasy Springs to grab a burger, fries, a beer, and a caramel cupcake. So yeah, overall, it's a decent restaurant. Are there better places to eat in DisneySea? Absolutely. But if you want to stay in Fantasy Springs, have something to eat, grab a drink, have some fries, and have a caramel cupcake, I think this place is pretty neat, and it's cool vibes as well. I like it in here. Whilst the indoor sections of the restaurant are lovely, it's also nice to sit outside. You don't get a great view of the ride. You're kind of looking at the ride's exit and queue, but you can sort of see the boats through the people every now and then, and you can maybe even get a glimpse of the tower. So if you want to just feel like you're in the area, and you can sort of roleplay and pretend that there's a real Rapunzel land there, the outdoor seating's quite nice too. Okay, so how about that ride? I think this has been the most controversial ride in the whole of Fantasy Springs. I've heard people say that it's wonderful. I've heard people say that they should flatten the whole thing and rebuild it, and everything in between. So let's get into Rapunzel's Lantern Festival. What is this ride? Why are people disappointed with it? And what did they get right? Let's take a look. So the first thing you see is the tower, which, again, it could be considered the land. I mean, this is basically the only thing that's in the land. But I consider it as part of the ride, and I consider it to be the ride's weenie. This is the thing that's pulling you towards the ride. Because what do you see when you get close to it? You see the boats going past outside. Ooh, I want to ride that. And just on the topic of having outdoor boats, we don't have an outdoor section to It's a Small World. Because we get heavy rain, we get very hot summers, and we get cold winters. Having the boats be outside is really, really nice. It gives guests something to look at. Like I said, it expands the area to make you feel like there's more of it. And an outdoor boat ride is really, really sweet. But I don't know if I would feel that way if I'm coming here in rainy season when it's pouring down with rain, or if I'm coming here in the middle of summer when it feels like over 40 degrees because it's so humid. Again, I think the main reason they did this was to expand the area and make you feel like there's more of it than there is. OLC clearly really, really wanted to push this idea that they're building 3 mini-lands based on 3 films. And I think ultimately that has led to a lot of the disappointment about this area and about this ride, because it is not on par with the other ones. Anyway, we get into the queue line, you go under this gorgeous sign, and immediately you're seeing lanterns and bunting hanging above you. I thought the whole area would be like this, but apparently it's just the queue. But it does give you a feeling that you're about to step into something a bit more special, you know? You've come from the forest, and now you're in the area where they're celebrating. As you get inside the building, you'll start to notice other things like this wanted poster of Flynn Rider. They always get his nose wrong, as well as some other maps and things on the walls. They add a bit of lore, they add a bit of detail, they're nice things to look at while you're queuing. You then head over the ride track, which I love doing. I love going over the ride station on a boat ride. I don't know why. I think it's just nice to see the ride you're about to get on from above, you know, see the vehicles and everything. It lets you figure it all out, and it gets you excited for the experience you're about to have. As you come down, you get a really nice view of the tower, but they were very careful not to just give you the view right off the bat. You can peek through the trees and get a bit of a view of it before you get on the ride. Because remember, you're about to take a boat right past this thing. That should be the moment, right? Before we board, long-time viewers of this channel will know that one of my top tips is to always ask for the front row of the ride. And while, yeah, I think you should ask for the front row on this as well, why not? You will have to fight with people in your group to decide who gets to sit on the left, because that's by far the best place to be sitting. On the right, yeah, I guess you get to be closer to the tower when you go past that, but on the left, you'll see, we'll get to it. That was a tip that my friend and podcast co-host Alex gave to me before I rode for the first time, and I'm really glad that he did. You can listen to me and Alex chatting about the Tokyo Disney Parks every week on the Land of the Rising Sun podcast. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Collectively, we've been living in Tokyo and going to the Tokyo Disney Parks for 25 years, so it's a good place to get tips and trivia as well as regular news, and also just hang out with some dorks talking about the dorky thing that presumably you also like, because you're 14 minutes into this video. So now it's time to board the boats. Let's get on, let's go! These are 4 rows of 4 seats, so they do deal with the crowds very well. They keep sending those boats through and through and through this thing too, so The queue moves pretty quickly. Once you're in there, it's really, really nice to see the tower from the boat. And it does sort of give you the idea that this is where you're supposed to see it from. Like, yes, it does work. I was worried when I'd seen footage before I went there that the forced perspective on the tower was a bit weird and that it wasn't big enough. It's not. It looks great from standing, but it looks the best from the boat when you're lower down and you're right next to it, and you can see Rapunzel singing out of her window. What you can also see from standing, but it's a little harder to spot, is that there's also a Flynn Rider animatronic out here too, across the waterway on the other side, sort of hidden in this cave rock formation. So this is really cool. Wow, we get to see 2 animatronics outside. This thing's really cooking. And then we see this Maximus animatronic, which is really sweet, but it has pretty limited movement. But the sculpt and everything is so good that he looks great anyway. And this big waterfall behind it. And now we're gonna go inside. So wow, if that's what we're getting before the ride, this is where the ride's really starting, right? You get a little glimpse of Rapunzel swinging around the tree as Flynn sort of looks at her. Again, these are pretty basic animatronics at this point, not on the same level at all of the Rapunzel one in the tower. I mean, Rapunzel here is just a static figure that's spinning around, whilst Flynn has some head movements, and to be fair, the sculpt and the way that he moves is pretty expressive. But you kind of think, oh, is it going to be like a bit of a montage then? We're going to see a lot of these small scenes, and then we're going to get to some bigger, grander scenes. Well, the next thing we see is the Snuggly Duckling in the distance. Oh, okay, so is this foreshadowing the Snuggly Duckling, and we're about to go inside and see all of the thugs and hooligans singing and dancing inside? Oh no, we're seeing Rapunzel now, and this fiber optic light effect with the hair looks really nice as you see her strands of hair glowing and pulsing with the magic that she's using to heal Flynn. It looks really cool, but there was something I just couldn't get over in this scene, and it's one of those things I'm so sorry for pointing out, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and that's that there's this gap in her hair, right behind her head, and it just looks so strange. It looks like unfinished, or like you can see the wires in there or something, and I can't stop looking at it, and I hate myself for looking at it every time. And now you're gonna look at it as well. I'm so sorry. But again, not a ton of motion. It's a small scene to the side of the boat. And we all know that boat rides, what they do really, really well is immerse you in a big scene. Think about Pirates of the Caribbean. You're completely immersed in these huge scenes with huge sets, something all the way around you, and you move slowly through these enormous spaces. Looking at something that's next to the vehicle, that's what Omnimovers do. That's what dark rides do. It seems odd to make a boat ride where the things are sort of off to the side. We'll get to why that is a little bit later, because now we see a scene which, when I saw the concept art, I thought this was going to be the scene. I thought this was going to be, we were saying, maybe it's going to be like Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure in Shanghai, where they have these enormous screens that are like bigger than the screens on Soarin', that feel huge. But no, this has that problem of it doesn't look big and far away, it looks small and close because it's small and close. They use projection mapping and it's sweet. Another thing Alex pointed out to me is that you can see the king's lantern. The king and the queen set off their lantern first, right? And then everybody else lets theirs go. That's a really nice touch. The music here does a lot, but yeah, I was thinking this would be like the moment. And it's not. What it is what I thought the Snuggly Duckling was earlier. This is setting up the next scene. This is the wide shot before we get into the story scene. So what is the next scene? Well, this is the moment. This is what makes the entire ride amazing. This is the lantern scene. Ever since anybody who is remotely interested in the Disney parks watched Rapunzel and saw them both in that boat singing to each other and seeing the lanterns fly up, you knew this has to be in a ride. They have to make a Tangled boat ride for this moment. And we finally got it. And clearly they knew. They were obviously on a limited budget, especially compared to Frozen and Peter Pan, but they knew we have to nail this scene. We have to. I thought it was going to be a much larger scene. I thought it was going to be a bigger area with tons of lanterns going on forever. It's not, but they do it so well. Just turning that corner and seeing the lanterns and hearing that beautiful song start to slowly fade in. Oh, I've ridden it so many times now and it makes me tear up every time. So you get in and you see the lanterns all around. They slowly start to envelop you all around. And then you get a good look at the animatronics, and they are so sincerely singing to each other, expressing their newfound love for each other. Oh, they nailed it. I thought they did an absolutely wonderful job with this scene. Yes, that song is so gorgeous that it could carry the whole scene in and of itself, and maybe it is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but I think they did a wonderful job here. And they clearly knew it, because they make you circle the entire scene. They literally give you as much time as they possibly could in this room with this ride system. Circle all the way around to look at it from every angle. And yeah, this is why I said sitting on the left is pretty good, because you get an unrestricted view of this scene. Towards the end of it, we see something that I think is interesting. I have my theories about it. We finally do see some of the thugs from the Snuggly Duckling. And I can't help but feel that maybe these were sculpted for a Snuggly Duckling scene, but the ride got cut short. I don't know, that's just my guess, but it seemed a little strange to have them here. I suppose the other reason could be that the ride has lacked any kind of humor or something young kids might like, so maybe it was to appeal to them, or maybe it was just to kind of bookend the end of the ride, because you turn around another corner, you see this mural on the wall that Rapunzel has painted, and you see the station, and you're like, whoa, okay. That's it, is it? We've known for a long time this would be 5 or 6 minutes long, which isn't dissimilar to Frozen, but I think so much of that time is used outside, and that doesn't feel like part of the ride, really. It might sound silly to say that, because of course it is, but that feels like the pre-ride. You know, I talked about It's a Small World earlier. When you ride It's a Small World in California, the outdoor section of that ride is not the ride, right? It's just a little introduction. It's a little meander before you get into the ride. So I think that's the expectation here. I think they give you so much outside that you expect that inside is going to be at least 3 or 4 times what there was outside. But it's not. You see these tiny scenes, bush, bish, bosh, and then it's the lantern scene, and just when you're soaking that up, the ride's over. Now, this has left some people really disappointed, and I can completely understand why. This is the only Tangled ride in the world. They finally built a boat ride, and it's really short. It's the small ride in Fantasy Springs. It seems like a missed opportunity, right? Couldn't we have had a Snuggly Duckling scene? Couldn't we have had Mother Gothel be an important part of the ride? Couldn't we have had the lanterns going off from the castle be this huge scene? Yeah, maybe we could have done if this was the new ride, but it's not. It's one of 4. And for better or worse, this isn't the big ride in Fantasy Springs. Now, am I of the opinion that they should flatten the thing and rebuild it? No, I think for what it is, it's great. But I think the fact that, one, they were pushing this idea that Frozen and Peter Pan and Tangled all have kind of equal representation in Fantasy Springs, when that's not the case, I think that's tripped them up. And I think the fact that this is the only Tangled ride, it means people expect more from it. If this was a complimentary ride to Anna and Elsa's Frozen journey, or another Peter Pan ride, and it was complimentary to those, I think people would be much less disappointed with it, because they would maybe go in expecting this is a kind of extra ride, this is a secondary ride, this isn't a big thing. But this is the Rapunzel ride in the Rapunzel miniland, and it is very, very short. Having said all that, I adore that lantern scene so much that I really, really do enjoy riding this every time. I just think you need to go into this with your expectations adjusted, thinking and knowing that it's a small boat ride. It's a small ride. Do I wish Rapunzel had a bigger ride? Yeah, of course I do. That would have been wonderful. Do I wish that they'd made the other rides in Fantasy Springs smaller to make this ride bigger? No, I don't, because they're great, and they all complement each other so well. Having said that, this is a mini land, a micro land, I guess, and it's a small ride. Now, to really put all of this in perspective, you have to look at the other lands in Fantasy Springs. So you should really watch this video where I talk about Peter Pan's Neverland, including the food, the rides, and all of the details that, sadly, the Rapunzel area didn't have.